Hello all, I'm Jess Chaikin. I'm the president of the board of directors for the chorale. I've been a member of the chorale since 1996. I've always been proud of this group and excited to share our concerts with this community, but I'm especially proud to share tonight's event with you. This has been our most extraordinary year. Sure, in 28 years, we've premiered dozens of new works. We sang at St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna. We held a concert by candlelight in a power outage, which I think we almost had to do now. And we even serenaded the president of Georgia on the balcony of the Tsar's summer palace in Tsinandali. But nothing prepared us for a year where we couldn't sing together. We're a community choir, and we build our community by singing with and for the people we love. Our rehearsals are as much social events as they are practice sessions. We stand shoulder to shoulder, we hug each other. All of that changed because of COVID. I never thought that attending a rehearsal or standing on the risers would be a risky behavior, but that was the reality for performing arts groups everywhere. We were within a couple of weeks of presenting songs both great and small when the board and artistic director Fred Binkholder decided we couldn't in good conscience continue to rehearse or put on our concert. It was an awful but easy decision to make. So how do you make music together when you can't be together? You tap into the skills, talents, resourcefulness, and resilience of more than 100 people who are just not ready to give this all up. For a year now, we've followed Fred and our accompanist Kelly Lenahan in Zoom. We sung with each other in Jamulus. We put on huge masks and stood 10 feet apart in parks and backyards just to see each other in all three dimensions and hear what those Zoom rehearsals should sound like. And each of us screwed up our courage and hit record on our phones, recording our one voice to be mixed in with all those wonderful people we should be standing next to. So here we are, a year later, excited to finally present songs both great and small. I'm so grateful to this community, to Fred for your artistic leadership. In my mind, we've extended your 25th anniversary season until this COVID thing is gone. To our wonderful accompanist Kelly for being ready for anything. To Bruce Kane for stitching all those single voices and faces into a beautiful tapestry that you'll see tonight. To our board of directors and the collective wisdom and experience they've brought to this challenge. This season would not have been possible without the financial support of our members, our donors, and our sponsors. You'll see our sponsors listed at the very end of this program. Please give them a shout out and a thank you when you see them or when you visit their offices, their restaurants. This season was also possible through gift grants from the Capitol Hill Community Foundation, the DC Commission on the Arts, and the Nora Roberts Foundation. And also the incredible professionals at National Capital Bank who assisted us in securing funds through the Paycheck Protection Program. I cannot thank you all enough. In a moment, I will hand this over to Fred, who will introduce the program, and he'll pop in with commentary between pieces, just like he would if he was standing on the podium. We encourage everyone to connect with each other through the chat, which you're already doing. Fabulous. We're also going to keep the Q&A section open. You're welcome to type your questions in there, and Fred will try to answer them either typing or in the breaks. So tonight's concert starts with Life is Mostly What We Make It, a shaker tune arranged by our fabulous composer in residence, Kevin Siegfried. It's the last piece we sang together in person, not knowing when this COVID thing would be over, but never doubting we would sing together again. The Georgians toast saying Galmarjos. It means to your victory. Tonight, I toast the Capitol Hill Chorale and our victory over coronavirus. It couldn't keep us from singing together. Galmarjos.
Good evening, everyone. Well, Jess took almost everything that I said, so I'll just try to reiterate and make it quick so that we can get on with the program. I just wanted to say welcome to everybody and thank you for being here. This is uncharted waters for us, and we're doing our best and we're making it happen. We can't wait to see you all again in person, in 3D, as I like to say. However, this has been an interesting little journey because a lot of times artistry, we take it for granted, or we take even the simple act of singing together for granted. And I think the biggest thing that we've learned over the year is to take measure of the beautiful things that we have. In the virtual world, there's going to be glitches, as I know that there's power outages and there's glitches in sound and people can't hear and all of that stuff. However, we have learned to adapt to this. Hopefully it's not a long-term adaptation, but yet it's a momentary thing that we're able to do. And that's what's so amazing. So tonight, what I'm going to do is like in a regular concert where I'll be illuminating each of the pieces and talking way too much and not enough singing. So I'm going to try to reverse that, and I'll try to keep it as minimal as possible. But if you have questions, feel free to put questions in the question and answer, and I'll try to answer them. And we will go through the program. The first piece, as Jess said, is Life is Mostly What We Make It. The conception of this concert was this massive hour and a half, 2 hour, just a love of the choral art, pieces like the Qui Abitur by Josquin du Prez. We'll hear Josquin's work later, but in a small 4-voice work. This was going to be a 24-voice, 6-part, sopranos in 6 voices, altos in 6, tenors in 6, basses in 6, a canon, which is magical, huge. And we've had to pare that back. However, tonight, it is a representation of a lot of these pieces so that you get a feel for what songs both great and small are. So again, starting with, please, Life is Mostly What We Make It, full of sunshine or storm.
Life is mostly what we make it, filled with sunshine or with storm. Just whichever way we take it, sad or cheery, cold or warm. Life is mostly what we make it, filled with sunshine or with storm. Just whichever way we take it, sad or cheery, cold or warm. Come what may, we need not borrow grief or trials, great or small, trials of the coming morrow, which may never come at all. Come what may, we need not borrow grief or trials, great or small, trials of the coming morrow, which may never come at all.
And so that tune, coming from the Shaker tradition, having that wonderful upbeat feel to it, we end and we begin with these ideas of singing together, of being together, and of it helping us get through our lives. And that is something that is so truthful with this. Again, as Jess said, in March, the week before the concert, walked in, and I had the assembled choir and had to say, we need to go. We have to go. And we can't do this concert. And somebody, a tenor, asked, could we at least sing this one song, because we don't know when we're going to get back together. And again, in hindsight, probably shouldn't have done it, but we got together and we sang that. And it just helped to sort of give us the determination to move on, which was great. Our next selection is a Kyrie. Since we're starting, we will start with the Kyrie. And this is from the Missa Ego Flos Campi by Juan Gutierrez de Padilla. And Padilla he was from Spain, but he moved to the New World, to Pueblo, Mexico, where he became the capella, the maestro di capella there. And he spent 40 years in that position. And he wrote over 700 pieces. 700 of his pieces still survive in the cathedral itself. It was a powerhouse in Mexico. And his music is not as well known as it should be. I'll put it that way. And one of the things that he did is that he wrote for double choir, a lot of music for double choir, which of course I dearly love. So tonight, the Kyrie is in double choir formation. And so you have 8 parts that are singing to each other. Now, the interesting thing is that Padilla began a transition from what we would call the High Renaissance into the Baroque period. And what would happen is you will hear it in the Kyrie. It's in 3 parts, Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, Kyrie eleison, in 3 parts naturally. He begins with polyphony, which is the old style, where voice follows voice canonically. Then in the 2nd and 3rd section, he goes to a homophonic section where choir 1 and is answered by choir 2, and then everybody comes together. It's a marvelous, marvelous compositional technique. And you'll hear his use of that throughout this. And in fact, at some point, we'll do the entire Mass. But right now, here is the Kyrie. His writing is just wonderful. If you don't know his music, I recommend you finding some. And when we are able to sing it for you in person, please enjoy it. It was just a marvelous time period, a wonderful musical time period. And he just wrote so well for the voice. Our next selection is another shaker tune. And one of the things that I dearly love about the Shakers is the humility in their entire thought and in the composition. And the next piece, Comforting Promise, in the title, or in the, as you look at the music, it says, and I'm going to read it, given by Mother Ann for all ministry, 2 o'clock in the morning, on Monday, August the 28th, 1848. But I was speaking with Kevin Siegfried today, and I was saying, so Mother Ann, she wrote this? I thought that Mother Ann was like the head of the Shakers back in the 18th century. And so the times didn't line up. And they said, no. He said, no, the person that wrote this down received it from Mother Ann. So that the composer is sort of the conduit for this thought. And comforting promise is a beautiful statement. In dark and trying hours, I'll be your constant friend. And in deep scenes of sorrow, we'll lend a helping hand. It's something that we need throughout. This was going to be one of those small pieces, not the great that you just heard, but this was the small, quiet voice. And for this, I chose 5 voices that will enter in throughout the composition. And it is short and sweet and beautiful and very touching. So I hope you enjoy Comforting Promise.
In dark and trying hours, I'll be your constant friend, and in deep scenes of sorrow we'll lend a helping hand. In dark and trying hours, I'll be your constant friend, and in deep scenes of sorrow we'll lend a helping hand. So faint not my beloved when trials do appear. There is a God who will your supplication hear. So faint not my beloved when trials do appear. There is a God who will your supplication hear.
Just another beautiful little tune. One of the things that's my joy as artistic director is that there's so much wonderful music out there. You have to search for it. You have to go and look for it, but you can find it. And then when you program it, it just makes perfect sense. And that was one of those pieces. The other joy that I have is working with such wonderful singers. I have a wonderful board, supportive community, but it's the singers and all of their energy and devotion. As I've kind of mused with people, when in the virtual world, something that I could fix in 10 seconds in rehearsal might take a week, because you send it out, they communicate it back, you send it back, then they communicate, and it's a back and forth process. So when you're watching these videos, and they seem short, it's an incredible amount of time, and I'm so happy and just beyond words of thanks to the singers for all of their devotion for this. Our next selection is something that I take a little bit of pride in. About 2 years ago at Georgetown, we were looking for a theorist. And the person that applied for the job he is a composer, and he is a fantastic composer, Carlos Simon. And in communication with him, again, trying to get to know people. Have you written any choral music? Well, yeah, I've written quite a few pieces. Of course, would you write some? Of course I will. What else have you written? And I found his Sanctus. And his Sanctus he wrote when he was an undergrad in Atlanta. So I went and looked at it, and it's just marvelous. He's taken the traditional Sanctus text, but he's put his own spin on it. It's accompanied by a piano, which our own Kelly Lanahan will play beautifully, and the choir sings this a studded entrance when we come in. So the basses that come in, tenors, altos, sopranos, and then he'll combine that into the full choir, and it's just marvelous. And I can't say enough about his compositions. Something that you need to know, though, is that I found out this week, and we found out, that Carlos is just won the post of the composer in residence for the National Symphony Orchestra. And so we're going to be hearing a lot of him and by him. And it's so marvelous that we were able to at least do this piece before he becomes out of our price range. But it's just a marvelous piece, and I hope you enjoy Sanctus. He's going to do great. If you listen to his opera compositions, he did a few years ago, the Night Trip. It's just marvelous. So keep watch out for him. So the next three selections in this concert of great and small, I was going to do the small idea of doing some madrigals. And these are three of my favorite madrigals of all time. And having quartets sing them, just so that you get an idea of the depth of choral music. Sometimes you hear, what's popular, but yet these used to be incredibly popular. Most composers that, and especially the ones we'll be talking about, they wrote both sacred and secular music, because the sacred music, that was a really steady paycheck, and that's what a lot of them did. That they had the heart to be in the church and to work for the church, but that was their profession. But they also composed some of these pieces of a new style of music, the madrigal or the frottala, which we're going to hear in El Grillo. And these composers would create these beautiful little pieces just for people. I always call it sitting out on a hill, eating sandwiches and singing together. These are things that you would do, get together with friends, and you'd sing a madrigal. Now, the first one is by Josquin du Prez. And Josquin, all three of these compositions, the composers are at the height of their game. Josquin, you know from a lot of masses and motets that he's written. And he's from the Franco-Flemish school, France, Belgium, in that area. It was a hotbed of activity during the Renaissance. And so he wrote this piece that is just El Grillo, the cricket. And it's sort of a love song, I take it. And what it is, that it's talking about how, I will read the text. The cricket is a good singer. By the way, I have to translate it. I'm going to translate it for you. He can sing long notes, and he sings all the time, but he isn't like the other birds. If they've sung a bit, they go someplace else. The cricket remains where he is when the heat is very fierce, and he only sings of love. Now, what's so interesting about this is that Josquin actually creates the idea and the mood of the cricket, where you will hear the cricket as it goes back and forth between singers, an idea being thrown back and forth to the singers. And so he creates that idea and that repetitive nature. So this is El Grillo.
El Grillo è buon cantore, che tiene lungo verso. Dale, beve, Grillo, canta, dale, beve, Grillo, canta. El Grillo è buon cantore, ma non fa come gli altri uccelli, come l'Itor cantato un poco, ande fatto in altro loco, sempre el Grillo sta por saldo, quando la marcia el caldo, allor canta so, per amore, per amore. El Grillo è buon cantore, che tiene lungo verso. Dale, beve, Grillo, canta, dale, beve, Grillo, canta. El Grillo è buon cantore.
So what you could see is that the singers there were wearing their singers' masks. And this is what we're going to have to be wearing for a while now. When we do our outdoor rehearsals, we wear those exact same things that are, you have a lot of space in which to sing, and you can hear relatively well. But again, the madrigal, the frottala, is what they just sang, which is kind of a simpler idea that is to be sung together. It's supposed to be a group of people singing it. As I said, the music would be printed, and the music publishing business also sort of took off at that time. So you could have copies of things and go out and have a sandwich and drink and and sing, which is what we love to do anyway. So the next composition, O occhi manza mia, by Orlando di Lasso, O occhi manza mia, oh, the eyes of my beloved, oh, eyes of my beloved, is another love song. This is a pure love song. This is one that, again, I always consider that even in today, love songs are 90% of what we hear. And this started back in the Renaissance, probably earlier, but this is where we start to get traction and we start to get this form to work. Now, Orlando di Lasso, again, from the Franco-Flemish school, and he's considered to be the most influential composer of the 16th century. He wrote over 2,000 compositions, which is just amazing when you think about it. Motets, madrigals, chansons. At this time period, people traveled quite a bit, especially musicians. And so they would go all over and they'd hear all of these languages and they'd get new ideas from people and they would expand their form. This one is just a simple 4-voice motet. Homophonically sung, not any polyphony, but really expressive from what you will hear. So the translation is, "O eyes of my beloved, golden eyelashes, face of a dazzling moon, keep me in mind, my beautiful joy. Look at me for a while and make me contented."
Occhi manza mia, occhi manza mia, cili dorati. Occhi manza mia, occhi manza mia, cili dorati. O faccia d'una luna, o faccia d'una luna stralucenti. Tienimi in mente, gioia mia bella, guardami un po' a me. A me, a me, a me, fammi contento. Tienimi in mente, gioia mia bella, guardami un po' a me. A me, a me, a me, fammi contento.
And again, the pieces are small and they're meant to be. They're not meant to be these long extended works with, da capo and no, it's just a simple little light love song. And the final piece of this set of 3 is a piece that I don't really remember when I first learned it. It seems like it's always been a part of my existence. Innsbruck, ich muss dich lassen. Innsbruck, I must now leave thee, by Heinrich Isaac. Now, Isaac was born in Flanders, but again, he traveled all over the place. He worked for the Medicis. He went and then went to the Habsburgs. And so he was all over teaching and writing and composing. So he was in Innsbruck, but then he got another job and had to leave. And so this was this song of longing, of not wanting to leave. And, if you've been to Austria, I can see his point. It's very interesting because he was a composer that really used a strong cantus firmus, which means a strong melody line. And in fact, this tune has lived on past his time period, which was great. Which you'll hear. Bach liked it. So Bach took that tune and then the text was changed to O Welt, ich muss dich lassen. O world, I must now leave thee. And he used it in the St. Matthew Passion. And then Brahms liked it so much that Brahms used it in his Opus 122, his organ work, the O Welt, ich muss dich lassen. But the predecessor, the first one was Innsbruck, ich muss dich lassen.
Innsbruck, ich muss dich lassen. Ich fahr dahin, mein Straßen, in fremde Land dahin. Mein Freud ist mir genommen, die ich nicht weiß bekommen, wo ich im Elend bin, wo ich im Elend bin. Groß Leid muss ich jetzt tragen, dass ich allein zu klagen, den liebsten Hullen Mann, lass mich im Herzen deinem Bart, dass ich muss sein, mein Trost auf allen Weiben, dein tu ich ewig bleiben, steht Freude froh, nun muss dich Gott bewahren, in alle Tode sparen, bis dass ich wiederkomm, bis dass ich wiederkomm.
Just a marvelous little tune. And thanks to the singers again for all of these. My job is so simple sometimes because you find great music and the singers are there to really bring it to life. Remember that otherwise the page would just sit there with these notations on it, and it takes the singer to breathe life into the compositions. And again, my fault for not reading the translation, but I'll just read the first verse and you sort of get it. Innsbruck, I must leave you. I will go away to foreign lands. My joy has been taken away from me, and I cannot achieve while being abroad. And it's just sorrow and grief about having to leave. And any of you that have ever been a musician, you know that sometimes you have to leave a gig and go to another town, and it's tough to pull up roots and to do that. And he does that so marvelously. The other thing that you heard is that the line went from the soprano to the tenor within the harmony outside of it, with the tenor in the center, and then back to the soprano having the melody. It was a little bit more fluid during this time period. And so you can hear that transition of thought. And now shifting gears and going to the 19th century to a beautiful little English part song called When Evening's Twilight. And this is from John Liptrot Hatton. And not a lot is, I mean, you can find music of his, but he's not like the first English composer that comes to mind. But yet this piece is marvelous. It uses the four voices equally, but then he'll do little duets within the context of it. So you'll hear the sopranos and altos or tenors and basses. You will hear these parts come out and they intertwine in this. He was born in Liverpool and he worked in London and Vienna. And it is just a wonderful example of the English part song. And this is another love song. And it's interesting because even though that in the Renaissance that was sort of the heyday of this, the tradition continued all the way through. And so this is just a different interpretation of that same madrigal-like thought.
When evening's twilight gathers round, when every flower is hushed to rest, when autumn leaves breathe not a sound, and every bird flies to its nest, when dawn kiss the blushing rose, when stars are glittering from above, when nature's self seeks sweet repose, then I think of thee, my love, I think of thee, my love. Then, oh, then I think of thee.
It's almost ephemeral. It's there for a moment and then it's just gone. And that's what the effect was supposed to be, is that in there singing and then it's out. And I just love the way that he uses the voices in that. A lot of that will also have influenced our final composition. We're already to the end of our little concert together, but it is great that we can end with such an upbeat piece. My Spirit Sang All Day by Gerald Finzi. I always joke that if I could have when I was young, you always heard about the Robert Shaw singers or the Tallis scholars or the Britten singers. Finzi has always been such an important composer to me that would be sort of what I could think of doing. It's so amazing because he was a choral composer. He was born in London, 20th century. He was friends with Vaughan Williams, and he studied with Bairstow. Anybody that has done a lot of church music knows Bairstow's work. But he has this beautiful fluidity in his writing. This piece in particular, it travels throughout meters throughout because it is the text that's important. So you might go from 3/4 to 2/4 to 4/4 back to 3/4, just so that it fits this beautiful text. And so it undulates underneath, and you will hear it as he marvelously does this. And it is basically in homophonic or chordal fashion, but it's just a beautiful way of him writing. He's one of my favorite English composers. He's of the same time as Vaughan Williams. Britten is also in there, but I feel that he has a very gentle hand with his writing, which it just really attracts me to it. So before we end also, I would just like to say thank you all for coming. Thank you for attending. I hope that you do put in some questions, because after this, I will stick around and answer any questions that you have. But whatever you would like. I'm a teacher, so I'm used to all ranges of questions. But again, we'd like to say thank you. We hope to see you in person soon, but also be on the lookout for our final concert of the year. And that's going to be of music specifically from the Shakers. doing a full shaker concert and shaker inspired concert with great help and coordination and also new compositions from our composer in residence, Kevin Siegfried. And we hope to see you soon. So to end our little time together, this is My Spirit Sang All Day.
My spirit sang all day.